Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the session today. This is a session or rather a prelude to WiT Ignite, which is scheduled in November, which is going to be an exclusive career fair for a lot of women in STEM. And I have a really, really special guest who I would like to introduce more as a friend. Who I have known from my school days, and life takes us in different directions. But she's somebody who's always stood and signified courage in some way and grace on the other way. And I think a combination of two is what makes Anupama Banerji so special for us. So for me, it takes me back to the memories of school when we were in probably the same class and probably different houses and different dorms, but those happy nights and those meals and those tuck shops. So floods of memories today, which are probably clogging my head. So I do apologize in advance if my questions go a bit awry and go into a bit of a memory journey with her. And since we are both Anus here, I will let you take a punt on which Anu you want to talk to when. I will probably be doing most of the asking, as you can imagine, and she'll be doing most of the answering, as I'm sure you are keen to explore what's been on her mind. So Anupama Banerji is an accomplished human being. She's not just a daughter of Shakuntala Devi, but she's also a lovely mother. She's a successful entrepreneur in her own right, and she is being a very steadfast partner with her husband through, all different phases of their life. So for us today, she epitomizes in some way a wife, a mother, a daughter, and a professional. So please join me in welcoming Anupama for this session.
Thank you, Anu. That was a wonderful introduction. And it was so kind, those words. Thank you.
Not at all. Pleasure's entirely mine. And good morning to you, actually, or good afternoon to you, Anu.
The time difference, right? Yeah.
Yeah. When I was thinking about this session, and I know this, I'm just kind of putting you on a bit of a spot, but there was a poem which came to my mind. And if you would recall Robert Frost from our English literature and English language class in Wellams, and a poem which came to my mind is something which I could relate with you was The Road Not Taken, or The Road Less Traveled, and by Robert Frost. And I would like to narrate it and then get started on the questions, which is: two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. And be one traveler, long I stood and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. So I think, kudos to you, to what you have been able to do, and, in some way shine in or bask in the glory of who you are, which I think not many people know about or knew about till the movie came out. And the movie, as I was saying, is a story of courage and grace, and it takes a lot of courage to tell people about what's really happened, through your life journey as well. So thank you so much for making us a part of your life. I think it's really special when somebody lets you enter that space, and I'm sure it must have been quite a journey for you. So my first question comes from that experience, and I understand that between Anu and the third Anu amongst us, and Nainika and you, it took almost 3 years of research for the film on your mother. And I'm wondering, how has that changed life before and after the film? And also share with us a little bit of how did this whole idea come about?
Well, that's a that's a movie unto itself, right?
Yeah.
How the whole thing. But actually, the first time, the first coffee we had, my husband Ajay Abhay Kumar, myself, Nayanika, and Anu Menon, the first coffee we had was 4 years ago, and we thought we're just going to, they had an idea. What had happened is, well, I was still grieving my mother's loss, and wasn't easy, So, and we were in London. They're based in London as well. And so they wanted to make this biopic on Mummy. And they said, can we meet you guys? We just do like a 10-minute chat, just to see, if there's anything we can do about it, and whether, it was just all in the air really at the time. And so we said, great, let's meet for a coffee. And where do we meet? In Harrods, Mummy's favorite spot in London. It was, by coincidence. And it was a very cathartic thing to be able to just talk about her, and it just helped me immensely. And I wasn't sure of which aspect of her life they wanted to hear about. It wasn't like, it was just like, tell us about. So I was like, gee, you do realize she was this maths genius, but there's so much more to her. She wasn't just a maths genius. She was so diverse in her interests, and she had this multifaceted personality. She was vivacious as a person. She wasn't your stereotype mathematician, who would just sit in what we think of mathematicians, just sitting in a room working out cube roots and whatever. And she wasn't that. There was a lot more to her. So we weren't sure of where we should get started. So it was just brainstorming sessions, and my husband was there as well. And we just told them, started from, wherever. And they just found it really interesting and said, we just have to highlight this person's life because there's just so much going on. And we want to show the world, the real Shakuntala Devi, and how she, the personal life, the personal aspect, which was so important, as well as all the things she accomplished. Obviously not easy in a 2-hour film, but I think they've done well, and the movie could have gone, either way, but seems to have done well. A lot of people have related to it. And I think the younger people who didn't know Mummy, they now know about her, and they're quite interested. And so it's been an absolutely beautiful journey, undoubtedly.
That's
Yes.
so beautifully. Yeah, that's lovely. I mean, it's great to hear that. And I think at least my mother has watched that movie 3 times over. And it was like, you should understand me better after watching this movie, because I think the whole emotion, and there's a lot of unsaid in the way it's been portrayed, but it's been said, or it's been said in a way which is unspoken. So and I think that's what has touched a lot of people's heart. So thank you for sharing that. And I do remember your mom when she used to come and visit us in school, and running through the Silver Oaks, if you remember, and
Yes.
with lots of energy. I mean, you couldn't take that away from her. And I think you were probably the calming influence on her always.
Always, yes. Yeah. My mother, let's just say, Mummy never went unnoticed. I mean, it's amazing after the movie, the kind of responses I've had, the kind of messages, people's personal experiences with her. And it's absolutely amazing. But I guess somewhere down the line, I'm actually happy with the kind of responses, because that was a story that needed to be told. And Anu Menon and Nayanika always maintained that, but I wasn't quite sure. But it's good. It came out. It was a different kind of movie, I think.
Yeah.
And like you said, your mom watched it, and very relatable. A mother-daughter angle as well. I mean, there's so many relationships involved, and so much going on at the same time. We all have that, right?
Yes.
People in our life, as well as our dreams and ambitions.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your influences, and what were your ambitions as you were growing. I want to move away a little bit, of the cut scenes in the movie. Your ambitions, and we know you've been a successful entrepreneur in your right, and people have watched the movie. But what inspired you to do that, and where is your career journey or your life journey headed now?
Yeah, it's the thing is, from I have to admit, we can't go away from the movie, but a huge influence in my life would be my mother, without doubt, because she was my whole family. It wasn't a normal family scenario where there's mom, dad, brothers. I don't have any siblings, and it was just mommy and me in this whole wide world. She was a single mother, and she was doing her best she could under those circumstances. We're talking about India. I
Yeah.
mean, without India is a lot more progressive today, right, than it was in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s perhaps, but today we're so much more. So you can imagine those times, yeah, for this woman to be bringing up this one daughter. And so actually a lot of influence came obviously from my mom and the people she met. There were a lot of other single women and they had this huge connect. And for example, there was this one lady. She was a lot older than my mother, and she came from Gujarat. You've got to believe this. I mean, this is unreal. She used to sell flowers in the streets of Gujarat. She never went to school. She never studied, and then she came to London. Yeah, and it's just pure hard work without ever learning English. She bought so many properties, houses, and then she would rent them out and she would help other Indians who came into the country. She never bothered learning English throughout it all. She just worked hard, did what she had to do, managed her assets, and and there were other ladies, there were writers, and there were all these women who were fighting to, they were looking for an identity. And so I guess growing up, I saw a lot of it and thought, but then I always wondered, I'm sure you can have it all, somewhere down the line. You don't have to
Yeah.
compromise. I'm sure you can have it all. Do you know?
Yeah, well, I've written a whole book called "Can I Have It All?" So that question
I
really
know.
resonates with me. But
Brilliant.
you
I'd
know,
love to read that.
well, a copy coming your way very soon then.
Excellent.
uh,
Thank you.
so I think, yeah, it feels like there multiple influences during your life journey, and that's obviously shaped you in a certain way. And when you look back, in your life journey 10 years from now, what would you like to see?
That's interesting because my older one, she's studying medicine. She's off to university. That was last year. My younger one's preparing. She's doing her A levels, and she'll be gone again. In a year and a
Right.
half. And yes, it's just going to be my husband, myself, and the cat. So we've definitely, yeah, it's going to be a new world. And the reality is, we bought a hotel and we're looking to expand. And we were hoping to kind of do a lot more things, but because of the pandemic, we're
Yeah.
just treading cautiously at the moment. This is really not the time to be doing anything very entrepreneurial. You want to be cautious at the moment. You want to be
Yeah.
careful and probably pursue other aspects of your life that you've been meaning to do but really haven't quite done yet, as yet. And you just have to make the most of the given circumstances, right? Make the most of what's happening. But yes, I'm hoping once all this is over that maybe I've always been interested in refurbishing. I like kind of mansion blocks, old buildings, and I think that's it's going to be a different kind of market. I think probably these hotels and yes is where I'm looking at the moment.
Yeah, we saw some of that in the movie. So we got that
You
right.
did. And did you like it?
It was beautiful. I mean, I wish, as I said, our paths didn't cross in London, but hopefully next time when I'm there.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, going back to your mom, I mean, as a WiT platform, we're right now super focused on the decreasing gender gap, especially in the STEM industry. And helping women attain some kind of leadership roles in their career. And given that your mother was probably the epitome of empowerment, and you've seen it from very close quarters growing up with her, what do you think are the gaps that prevent women today from realizing the potential in whichever form, in whichever field? We look at today, this representation is yet a problem. I mean, we have more women now enrolling into STEM and maths, but then it's not moving forward. We feel stuck somewhere.
Yeah. I think the thing is, my mother was different. I think the difference was she was a fighter. She had these ambitions, and she wanted to get there at any cost. It was like, I'm looking at something, and I'm just going to get there. It doesn't matter, come what may. Nothing's going to stop me. That's an approach, and there are, but then there are approaches like, you want to be cautious, you don't want to mess with the people around you. I think the people around you make a huge difference as well. And I think with my mother, she had my father, who was a huge support as well. But I'm not sure that that is a normal case scenario, because the thing is, what has been embedded into tradition, not just in India, but the world over, is that women are supposed to manage their families, and they're supposed to be all these things, and career is not your focus in life, whereas for a man it is. So the woman needs to manage both very well. And so I think a lot of it also depends on the people around you, and if they're supportive and they share everything, it's a lot easier than if do you see what I mean? It's like, not everyone has that. I think it's very important to be even the way from the time you're brought up, right? Girls are told they're different, boys are told they're different, yeah. And yes, this is a traditional kind of mindset which has been all over the world, but in India more so. It's very embedded into the system. I mean, a woman, a girl, you are supposed to be these things. But then saying that, we've progressed immensely, from my mother's time. I mean, those days were, seriously terrible. They were, I don't know, I can't even comment on, I don't know how she did it, because it was pathetic. I mean, seriously, it was. I mean, today, at least, I think women have a lot more opportunities. Of course, there are all kinds of people who make this world, but you wouldn't think it was a shocker to find a man who was supportive, like in those days. My dad was considered somebody who was very unusual, because he was really not a man from the 60s or the 70s. He was a man of today, very, very progressive. So I think it's the traditional mindset. We need to kind of move away from that a little bit, and look at both being equal. Do you think that would?
I think it would. I think what you're pointing out is very right. It's about having the hunger and the aspiration, right? And then being able to find the supportive ecosystem to nurture that hunger and that ambition of a woman. And I think there are hundreds of women on this call right now, and I'd love to go back to the movie. And there's one picture which has done the rounds, where you're holding that first scene board. I have seen that in multiple places, and that was probably the first moment of the kickoff of the Shakuntala Devi movie. Tell us a little more about it. What went on for you at that point of time?
Explain to me, when I'm holding the board for?
You're just doing a scene cut, and you're saying, okay, get started with the movie. I've seen that kind of picture of yours in one of the scenes where you're just kicking off the shoot of the movie. And the scene. So yeah, I think just that picture was just very poignant for me. So just checking in, what went on for you at that point of time?
It's just that I'm just really happy that my mother's life has been brought to the forefront, and people actually get what she went through. Because I think my mother wasn't the only one, in those times. There were hundreds and thousands of women who went through what she did, but a lot of them couldn't fight or didn't fight the way she did.
Right. And sorry to interrupt here, but it feels like that was really important for you. And
But it
I'm
keeps
just saying that,
breaking.
yeah, the fact that people discovered a
Yeah.
holistic Shakuntala Devi than the human computer was an important bit for you. And I've heard that in different ways during this conversation. What made this so important for you? There's something which you've obviously shown the world, and it's certainly something which has had a high stickiness with a lot of women
Okay.
out there. But that motivation to show it came from you. So where, how did you come about that?
You mean the real Shakuntala Devi?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I wanted, actually, it was very important when we spoke to Nayanika and Anu Menon that she needed to be portrayed as the woman that she really was. And what was throughout the time growing up, I remember what used to bother the word I'm not sure is bother, but it was like wherever we went, the first question people would ask her is, how do you do your maths? And she always thought there's so much more to me than just maths.
Yeah.
It's just not, I'm not just some kind of a computer who goes around beating I'm not just doing that. It's not like a challenge I do 24 hours a day. I am doing other things. There is so much more to me than, she had this amazing sense of humor. She was so emotional, like you saw, the turbulence in our relationship. And she was so much a woman, and there was so many things to her. I'll just give you an example. She loved to cook. She just loved going into the kitchen and she would cook. And she wrote a book, and the book was called Cookery Book for Men, because it was very important to her that men need to go into the kitchen and cook. It's not just a woman's job to be cooking. That is so primitive. And the book is specifically for men, Cookery Book for Men. And if you see, it's kind of a little bit funny. If you read the book, the recipes are really simple, and her logic being, I kept it really simple so that men can understand. It was quite funny because she believed women were really all round and so highly intelligent. Women were so capable. Women were brilliant, and it's the men who needed help, really.
Right. No, that's, I'm going to order that book if it's available on Amazon and give it to
Yes,
my
you must read it. She's kept it really simple. Trust me.
for sure. So we have quite a few questions pouring in, but before I move to the audience and pick up some of the questions, excuse me, one last one for me is, you mentioned somewhere, and I was reading that there was a lot of drama in life, right? And one of the thoughts which went through my mind was that if you did this film when your mom was alive, what would be her reaction?
Really? Should have said, oh, come on, we were a lot more dramatic than in the movie. Why
Oh
did
my
you
God.
tone it down? Why did you tone it down? And I would have said, Mommy, because the audience wasn't prepared for something like that. They had to, because the audience wouldn't believe it. Because a number of questions I've had saying, I remember when the crew came to London for the London part of the shoot, so many of them looked and said, can I ask you a question? I mean, seriously, was all this true? I mean, I said, the real version, it was a lot like the court scenes, and
Yeah.
those were so dramatic. And I mean, I remember there's this senior counsel and all that. They just couldn't believe what happened. And then, at the hotel when we fought a lot more. It was loud. I mean, I think the people around us would know there's something going on, because we were very emotional. And so I think, I remember Nayanika used to say, we need to tone down that bit. I don't think the audience is quite prepared, so let's tone that down. But let me think. I think she would have liked the movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure she would. And she would have liked an unedited version of it and a reality show rather than the toned down version which Nanika brought about. So I shall pass on your feedback to her and
Yeah, I
give
should
my
have probably said, if you're doing it, just do it all out.
yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure the audience would have loved that also, as they love.
No, but what I like is they've captured it beautifully in the film. It's before it released, there was a bit of nervousness, obviously, about wonder how it's going to be accepted, and the mother-daughter angle, so much. But Nanika and Anumenon, they really felt it was important to bring that out
Yeah.
because they had their reasons, and especially for the way India is today, that people would watch and actually understand what's going on and relate to it,
Yeah.
and
I think,
hence,
you said it was cathartic for you, and it's been cathartic for many of us because when I was talking to my mother, who's been a working doctor and has had a very hectic life all her life, um, and why it touched a working mother and a daughter relationship so poignantly is as a daughter, you miss out so many things when you're growing up till you reach that situation yourself. And then you start to realize that actually what she would have gone through. So I think that's the beautiful grace which I was saying is very unspoken but beautifully exhibited in the film. So I'm going to pick a couple of questions which are coming up in the chat. So we have one from Pareen Kaur which says moms are so special. To share them with the world and show their real self is a matter of pride and very brave. Admire you for that. Question to
thank
you: what do
you.
you personally rate higher in today's world, IQ or EQ?
Sorry, it keeps breaking. It broke again. What did I didn't hear the last bit.
So the question is: what do you rate higher, IQ or EQ?
Do you know? I think hard work can't. There is no substitute for that. And of course, God gives you certain things, which is fine. But you can always further, what He's given you. You can make the most and be the best you can.
Yep. So
You
probably
know.
both
So,
IQ and EQ is the
pardon?
sense. I'm saying probably you're saying you can increase your
Yes.
IQ
Yes.
and EQ, of course, stays. I mean,
Yes.
you've seen the emotionality coming out from you even in this conversation and through the movie.
Yes.
So I think the answer is pretty evident.
Yes.
Moving on to another question, which is what is one suggestion you would give parents to be more supportive with their children?
I think that's the answer to that is a really long one, but I'm not sure I have the right answer. I have two girls, and who's to say which is, like you said, there's always two different paths, and who is to say which is the right path to take? But as by what we know with of today, I think it would be treat your son and daughter the same way. They're both equal. You don't have to tell one that your daughter to be different, or be fair to both and let them both pursue what they want in life as long as they're happy, and let them both pursue their ambitions in the same way. And I think if everyone does that to their children, even the boys in our society will change. And that's probably a starting point, and it'll be fair to the girls as well, starting from when they go to school. Put both of them in the best schools possible. Don't be favorable to one over the other. That would be a good starting point, really.
So equality is a big theme.
That's
Um,
right.
yeah, I'm going to pick up a question in between, and there are plenty. And oh, I'm a little nervous now. I can see that my mother has logged into this session,
Oh,
Anupama.
say hi
So,
to her.
well, I'm sure she's watching you and listening to you, but I'm going to pick up the question from her lest I get beaten up later. What behavior, I hope this is not a feedback to me, do you advise today's children towards their parents? They can be a little self centered. I hope that's not for me, but anyway.
Will
So
you?
basically, I think the question is about, as grown up children,
Yeah.
how do they look after their aging parents?
That's yeah. I think it's a responsibility all children should have, because our parents do the best. I mean, whatever that might be at the time, under the given circumstances, they do the best they can for us, right? And if they don't turn to us, who do they turn to when they're old and they need someone?
Yeah.
But I don't think that that can be taught by telling our children that. That's the only thing I would say. Do you know those parents who keep saying, "Will you look after us when we're old?" I'm not sure that's the way to go about it. Do you see where I'm coming from? Probably, teach your children to be kind in the first place, and it'll probably come back to you in a much better fashion than if you told them they need to look after you when you're old.
Yeah, and I think you've done a fabulous job. I mean, the last
Thank
few
you.
years with your mom, your ailing mom, and I think in some way what I took away was the gift of connection and the gift of time. Because as parents age, what they need is really your time, and which
Yes.
is always in a short supply because somewhere we all are caught up what they call is life, and life throws multiple
That's
things.
right. And the reality with someone like my mom was, because she had loads of admirers and she had loads of fans and she had all that, but she didn't have the soulmate.
Yeah.
You see, so she was alone in this whole wide world at that time, and she really did, kind of how she was when I was little. She did her best, and I felt that I really needed to be there for her because I was the only thing she had.
Yeah, and you were certainly a gift for her. So moving on to next question from Shubhra, curious to hear if, from your experience with your mom, what would you say, maths is nature or nurture? Another way to look at it, it is an innate gift, something you work to hone. So something you can learn or you're born with.
Somebody, I think it's a given that for somebody like my mom, it was what you're born with, right?
Yeah.
But I I personally believe maths. I mean, how would I? I don't. I'm not saying I'm right, but I really believe that if you really, it's about understanding, right? It's a concept. It's not an art. I think you can learn it up to a certain level. Obviously, if you're talking about if it's going to go beyond a certain limit, a lot of it, there is a bit of natural, how much you're God given as well, but you can actually achieve it by practicing and learning. I do believe that.
Well, I certainly passed my grades in Willems, as you know, by just practicing, nowhere close to taking it for my postgraduate. And I see a bit of a thread, at home because my husband is an engineer,
Ah,
and my son right now, who's apping for college, desperately needs a cutoff in maths. So, given his inclination right now, that's all he's striving for. So there's certainly some element of working through it.
you think
And
so? But do you
yeah,
think you worked hard enough for it, or was it just that you weren't that interested in it? Do you see what I mean?
would you remind me who a maths teacher was in school?
Oh gosh,
Maybe it's
don't
got
go back
something
there.
to do with that.
No.
Okay, we
But
will not embarrass her
they
right
were good
now.
teachers, though. They were
Yeah,
very good teachers, though. I remember that. That's no excuse.
I know, I know.
The teachers
So,
were very good.
yeah, teachers were good. I think it's a matter of what interests you early on, and then where you put your
Yeah,
energies. And
exactly.
clearly for me, yeah, I mean, you could do maths, but something else was the calling. So, for any subject, and I think that would be true for
Exactly.
any subject that we would do.
It's your
Moving
interest level in it, right? The more you're interested, the more you're going to try and, you know.
Yeah. There's a really interesting question, which is since you talked about having it all, from Anamika, which is how can women strike a balance between having it all and wanting it all? As it's always a choice to make.
Yes. Um, like I said earlier, I think is now the people who are around you, they're the ones who are around you. You can't change them, but try to be selective with the people you choose to bring into your life after a certain point. Because if that goes wrong, it can be very difficult. If you want to bridge the gap of what you want and what you actually achieve, it's important to have supportive people around, and probably be careful and be selective. Because if you get that wrong, you're just going to be compromising, and that's not going to make you happy in the long run, because you'll always have regrets and you'll always be looking back. And support is I'm not saying they need to help you, but just not bring you down.
Yeah. So prioritize and be selective about your goals.
Yes.
There's a question which has gone back to the movie. So as you can see, we're ping-ponging, which says during your movie, we've seen ups and downs in the relationship. And finally, it becomes a very strong bond towards the end of the movie. What was the trigger and what changed it and took it towards that path and that strength which, your relationship then finally survived on?
I think, the bottom line of the whole thing is it was definitely very turbulent. We fought. It was not a bed of roses at all. And we had lots of issues. We were angry and everything. But through it all, I think what mattered is we really loved each other. And growing up, I was angry. I felt, she's always looking out for herself. She doesn't care about me, and things. But as I grew up, I began to understand that it was hard. She had a hard life and came out of very, very difficult circumstances, and had to. And like I said, my father was always very, very supportive of her. If there were times I would call my father and complain, "Oh my God, mommy's so difficult," and this, and he would say, "Look at her point of view. Try and understand. It's difficult. She's juggling so many things at the same time. She's this one single woman managing so many things, and she has you, and she loves you enormously." And and then the other angle, when it used to be, "Oh, she's so possessive. She doesn't let me." So that was how it was growing up. But thanks to, like I said earlier, my father, if it had been somebody else, and it's because I always heard him out, and he always explained to me, how to look at her point of view, that by the time I was a certain age, I started realizing, my mother does have a point of view, and it's not easy. And I need to see that as well. I can't just be thinking of myself all the time. And this is the best she could do under the circumstances. And, I just have to be supportive, and we love each other, and we would do anything for each other. That's what mattered.
That's lovely. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's, again, very courageous of you to dig deep and share that with the people attending the session. And, the questions are dropping like the Matrix movie right now. So I'm going to be a little selective here. Apologies if I'm not picking up all the questions. I'm moving on to the next one, which is from Preeti Narayan. And she says, "Hi, Anupama, my family and I love the movie. As parents, there is no manual. We all make mistakes. And from your own life experiences and with your mother, what is the one parenting tip that you felt worked?"
One parenting tip that my mother followed towards me, or just generally?
Just generally, which you think worked from
Yeah.
your relationship with her.
I think the one thing that really worked is, which I'm not sure would work for everyone else, but I think it worked for her, is because she was so progressive, and we were very honest with each other. We would tell each other things as they were. And I think not so much when I was younger, but as I grew up, I think, and that's why we had all those issues, because we would talk about things a lot more, with a great deal of honesty. And that's why a lot of things would come out, and we would judge whether that was okay to think that way or not, But I think that made us closer. Because yes, we would fight, but then we would make up, and it would be all, all hugging and cuddling, and oh, you're the best mom, oh, you're the best daughter. And then, and I'm really glad I did that, and I opened up to her, and we would speak, because who else would we speak to, really? She was my whole family, and likewise. So um, we believed, I think, honesty and being yourself to the ones you love and the ones who love you back. That's very important, because they know the real you and you know them as the real person.
Yeah, and that I think paves the way for a strong foundation, as we can see in the
Strong
relationship.
relationship.
Yeah.
Yes.
There are two similar questions, so I'm going to combine it, which is from Smita and Aruna, which is, does your mom used to make you learn math concepts? Sometimes during your schooling, and it's with the emoji, smiley emoji. How did you feel about it? And was she constantly practicing maths? Which I suspect not, because
No, you know her. Does
yeah,
she
yeah,
look like she would practice maths, Anu?
no, no, no. There was something working, and as the movie shows, that they tried to figure it out and nobody could figure it out. But no, I don't think so. I think she
You
was
met
some.
her, so I mean,
Yeah,
you would know as well. So no, she never worked out formula, and she was. Do you know the best part of it? This is a very interesting fact about her personality. Let me tell you, she was very easygoing.
yeah.
For all that, trust me, because now when I look back at my friends and then they talk about their moms, but you know my mom was really ahead of her time. She was well traveled, she knew so many cultures, I think she understood people. And we may have had issues in the short run, we may have had, but once we came out of it, I think we came out on top, and we came out stronger and better. And I'm glad we did that, because if we hadn't, I don't think it would have ever been the same, that very strong bond. She's such a special person in my life. And she's not about maths at all to me. The maths bit just comes as a by. I know she got the Guinness World Record for it, but it's it's a very small aspect of her life. Do you know she wrote 14 books? Apart from the book on cookery, yes, she wrote a book on homosexuals. She wrote a book called The Perfect Murder.
Was that fiction or non-fiction?
Um, it was well, I think, do you know, this was ages ago, sometime in the 70s. I never spoke to her about it, because there were so many things she did. This was just
You know
one.
why I asked that question, Anupama? Because in the beginning of the movie, we witness a really funny, incident where she shoots off somebody's ear. So I was
Yes.
just trying to connect the two and see
So you thought
how
she was trying to
joke it
murder
was.
him and it didn't happen?
Yeah. Okay.
No. No,
Yeah.
that really happened, but the book bit was totally separate. As I said, I never actually spoke to her about it, but I know that when she wrote the book, it was so popular that people actually wondered whether, and there was a murder that happened that was similar, and they started connecting the two. And there were all these rumors, that was it that and thing, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that, but it was called The Perfect Murder. And so she had so many varied interests. And she used to try and sing, not very well, but she would
Okay.
sing. She would
Well,
play flute. She would,
wow. Okay.
all sorts of. So there was a book on riddles.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a joke book. So she had all these aspects. And so maths was just a very small part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're discovering a little more than the movie here. So thank you again for sharing that.
Thank you.
There's a question from Shubhra, which is, Anupama ma'am, my question is, if you could go back in time and change one thing, possibly in the movie or with your mom, what would that be?
I don't know. I have this thing in my mind. I do think, sometimes that I wonder if I should have been a little more gentle towards her, because she went through a lot. I mean, the realities, she really struggled, came out of nowhere. She had this very difficult childhood. She lost her sister, who she loved dearly, at a very young age, and then she knew loss. And then I had a sister, and the baby was very small. She lost her, and these things. She came out of so much. It couldn't have been easy. So I think, but then I think again, if I hadn't been a little bit forceful, would I have been able to pursue my own side of things? I have a life of my own, as sounds a little bit, but I have a life of my own as well, and I just can't be tagging along to what mummy did. It was, I had to live my life and do the things I wanted. Like I said, I wanted it all. You
Yeah,
see?
you have it. In some ways, you have it. So
Thank
uh,
you.
we're just over time, but I'm going to take the last question here. Did your mom teach you maths anytime?
Briefly, when I was young, I think the plan was, why bother sending her to school? She can always be with me and I'll teach her whatever's necessary. But the reality is, you can't just teach maths and say that's all you need for schooling. There's a lot more to it. It's the social contact. I love, actually, on a serious note, I think the best thing mommy did was put me in boarding school. Because
Yeah.
I just couldn't have been my life. That can't be healthy, just tagging along, going to different countries, doing that. I think boarding school really helped me see things, learn, interact with people closely, learn a lot, teach you about life, right? As opposed to just your academics. Academics, you can always learn them. It's not the end of you will, but I think life skills, I'm not saying I'm an expert in life skills or anything, but uh, it's important. Boarding school teaches you a lot. It really does. Starting from how to love food. Do you remember our tuck shop and the
And the mess. I mean, the real mess and the dining room. Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
so just eating with all these people, yeah, just simple things.
you were actually quite decent at sports, unlike me. I mean, at that 5 a.m. cocoa,
Great memory. I
getting
just
up.
tried everything. The reality is, I'm not actually a sporty person, but I just did it because I was curious. But as you grow older, if you're not going to pursue sports, it just goes away, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think we have a few stories to talk about. 5 a.m. winter morning, running for that hot shot cocoa, which none of us wanted to have, and being
Seriously. And the PE first thing in the morning. Do
God,
you
yeah,
remember?
yeah, yeah. Terrible. In Dehradun, winters, 5:30 a.m. on the field doing PT. Happy memories. We leave them here. But look, I know we've taken more than committed time from you. This has been such a beautiful discussion. And as I said, walk back for me through the memory lane. And as I kind of conclude this talk, I'm reminded of the fact that whether it's your mom or you, it's all about life doesn't always present you with a perfect opportunity. You just go out and create it. And I think both of you in some ways have gone out and created it. So thank you on behalf of the entire audience which is listening to you today for sharing such personal moments and personal thoughts. Any last few words for the audience before I bring this to a close?
Well, I hope you've enjoyed the movie, and I think what we can take from it is follow your dreams and don't shy away from that. Whatever you want to pursue, you can do it. It can happen. It's just that you need to make sure your surroundings are the right way for you to be able to pursue those dreams, and it's all up to you, really. We just have one life to live and make the most of it, really.
Absolutely. Thank you so much again, Anupama, and thank you everyone for joining us. I think, hopefully you've got more than what you have watched in the movie, a little bit of uncut or unedited version from Anupama. As her mom continues to inspire us, I think we should be grateful for her, making this movie and letting us know much more. about what she was, not just a mathematician, but even a mother, a single mother, a beautiful author. And I've learned that, I'm going to order a few books, and a chef. So thank you again. Pleasure talking to you. I look forward to seeing you soon sometime in London. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Stay
That
safe.
was lovely. Thank
Thank
you.
you.